Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into a huge topic that's been making waves. Is the US economy heading for a recession? It's a question that's been on everyone's mind lately, and I'm here to break it all down for you. Whether you're worried about your job, your savings, or just trying to make sense of the market, this video will give you the information you need. Now, I know it sounds like a loaded question, but stick with me because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. The stock market has been swinging wildly, inflation is still a concern, and tariffs are back in the spotlight. Some people are wondering if all of this is part of a larger strategy, or if we're heading toward a full-blown economic downturn that no one's really prepared for. What makes this even more interesting is how President Trump has been shifting his tone recently. From bold promises of economic prosperity to telling Americans to just be patient, it's leaving a lot of people scratching their heads. So, what's really going on here? Is this just a temporary setback, or is something bigger lurking just around the corner? Stay tuned, because we're going to break this down and figure out what it really means for you. But before we get started, if you want to stay informed about the economy, inflation, investing, and everything in between, make sure to hit subscribe. I promise I'll break it down in a way that makes sense and keeps you ahead of the curve. Let's kick things off by looking at some of the big moves that have been made recently. First, we have President Trump's decision to impose tariffs. If you're not familiar with tariffs, let me give you a quick rundown. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods. The idea is to make foreign products more expensive and, in theory, encourage Americans to buy more domestic products. Sounds good, right? Well, here's where it gets tricky. While tariffs might help U.S. businesses by boosting demand for American-made products, they also make everything more expensive for all of us. We're talking about everyday items that we all rely on. When prices go up, businesses may start to slow down hiring, cut jobs, or even raise their prices to make up for the increased costs of doing business. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. The stock market has taken some major hits, with the Dow Jones dropping almost 900 points in just one day. That kind of movement isn't random. It happens when investors start getting nervous about the economy. When investors pull back, it can lead to real consequences, companies losing value, cutting their budgets, and slowing their growth. Now, Trump has defended his approach, claiming that this is just a period of transition and that the U.S. will benefit in the long run. And I get it, there's some logic to this argument. The idea is that by making it harder for foreign companies to compete, American businesses will step up and fill the gap. But history shows us that tariffs don't always work that way. Instead of companies bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., businesses often just pass those higher costs on to the consumer. And that means inflation stays higher for longer, which is the last thing anyone wants right now. Another shift that's been happening is in Trump's messaging around the economy. In the beginning, he used the stock market as proof of his economic success. But lately, he's been downplaying the stock market's performance, telling Americans not to worry about short-term fluctuations. That's a major shift in tone, and it's got a lot of people wondering, does he know something we don't? It's a fair question, and it's causing a lot of concern among investors. Big financial institutions, like Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase, have already lowered their growth forecasts for 2025. When the big players in the market get cautious, that's usually a sign they see something coming. So, let's talk about whether or not a recession is actually on the horizon. Recessions don't just happen out of nowhere, they take time to build. A lot of different factors contribute to a recession, like rising unemployment, falling consumer spending, and shrinking business investments. And right now, we're starting to see signs of all of these things happening. For example, businesses are already cutting back, and the stock market has been volatile. But here's where it gets really interesting. Consumer sentiment is way down. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York recently reported that Americans are more concerned about their financial situation than they've been in years. That's a huge deal because when people are worried about their finances, they tend to spend less. And when spending slows down, businesses start making less money, which can lead to layoffs. It's a chain reaction that can quickly spiral into a full-blown recession. Let's also talk about inflation for a moment. Trump ran his campaign partly on the promise to tackle inflation, but here we are. Prices are still higher than they should be. The Federal Reserve has been hesitant to lower interest rates because they don't want to make inflation worse. Without rate cuts, borrowing remains expensive, which means businesses and consumers have less flexibility with their finances. So, what does this mean for you? If you're worried about your job security or savings, now's the time to be smart about your finances. Make sure you have an emergency fund, avoid unnecessary debt, and be cautious with big financial decisions. If the economy does slow down, having a financial cushion will make a world of difference. The big question now is whether Trump will double down on his strategy or change course. His administration insists that the economy is strong and that any hardships are just temporary. But here's the reality. If businesses continue to struggle and consumers cut back on spending, no amount of political messaging is going to change the numbers. So, is Trump planning a recession? Not exactly. But his policies could definitely push us toward one, whether that's intentional or not. Some believe he's taking a long-term gamble, betting that the short-term pain will lead to long-term gains. Others think he's underestimating the risks involved. Either way, we're in for a bumpy ride. So, what can you do to prepare? Stay informed, make smart financial decisions, and be prepared for whatever comes next. If you found this video helpful, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think we're heading into a recession, or is this just part of a bigger plan? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to stay updated on everything that could affect your finances. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.